In photography, bokeh is the blurry out of focus parts of an image that look really cool. I've been wanting to create a piece of bokeh artwork for ages, and I wanted to combine it with some raindrops, like car lights coming in a car window, something like driving in the rain in a city, but I wasn't sure how to do it. And then the other day I was looking through my art supplies and I came across this circle stencil. So I was able to create a quick and easy background with my airbrush to get the look I wanted. I applied gesso over my paper first to make sure it was archival and able to accept liquid, and then using a foam brush painted the entire background black with acrylic paint. I painted with a foam brush to cover it quickly and also to get a smoother finish than what would have been achieved with a paintbrush. In my airbrush I used acrylic paint thinned down. I just used red, blue and yellow. I also used white paint, which on the black will look grey at first until I made it look more opaque with some more sprays. And these are just basic acrylic paints, nothing expensive or artist grade, and they're just thinned down to the consistency of milk. I used a reference, but I changed it a little bit, so what you're seeing here on the screen is just my finished painting. I don't use an airbrush for all my work, but it's a very fast and fun way to get backgrounds looking good. One of the things I like about it is not only the immediacy of it and the vibrant opaque look, but because if you mess up or change your mind, you can repaint the background or begin again. You can just cover up a section of it as well. You can do that because acrylic will cover up the previous layers. The circle stencil was the perfect tool because typically bokeh effects are slightly blurry and also not perfect. You might get two circles overlaid or different colours within one circle depending on the light source, and this was easy to achieve with the stencil and the light spray that you can get using an airbrush. For this piece I used the same sized circle shape throughout, so I made sure I wasn't overspraying too much inside the other circles, and that is a look that can look pretty interesting depending on what effect you want to achieve. Well, I just kept on spraying circles until I had as many as I needed. I didn't want to overload the image, but I wanted to blur some of the circles to make them seem like oncoming lights, or to just let the imagination decide on what was going on in the scene. I used the same colours that I used for the circles to spray a kind of blurry light underneath and around. This is done just by spraying the airbrush at more of a distance and keeping it moving. It's always easy to add more, but you don't want to spray too much at once or go overboard, so a light mist is all I did to keep everything looking like a foggy, rainy evening. For anyone who's never used an airbrush before, I think it's a great addition to your art tools. It's not expensive, neither are the paints, and practicing the airbrush by doing some backgrounds is the perfect start, and you can just use some craft paint to get going. The learning curve isn't steep, especially if you're not going to be adding any details, so it's great for bokeh effects when you don't need to be precise. I added more colour to the existing circles, but I wasn't too careful if I didn't match the circle beneath it at all, and with an airbrush you can get a thin layer easily with another colour to get transparent cool effects, and this would be a lot more tricky to get without an airbrush. Not impossible by any means, but certainly not as fast. Acrylic is so good for using light colours over the top of darker colours. And the more pressure I was applying, the more bold and opaque the circles become, or rather the lights became, so they were able to really look like they were lights glowing from a scene. And I just kept perfecting the background until I had it just as I wanted it, adding a few more reflections at the end until I was ready to start adding in the raindrops. I switched to my art table to make it easier to paint up close. Painting raindrops in is not really all that difficult because raindrops don't have much of a shape and they're made up of just a few colours and just 3 values, a light, a medium and a dark value. So all I was trying to achieve is a blob-like effect in essence. I found it easier to put my dark value in first, so I used some black acrylic paint to make things really stand out. I was pretty random with my placement, and for this kind of thing I wasn't really following any reference. I was just using a bit of my imagination, a little bit of a reference here and there, but trying to remember that rain falls on a window pane in varying directions. So perhaps there might have been a breeze. So I tried some variation to keep things more believable and more interesting. Some of the raindrops came in sideways and some were more bigger than the others. Some of the marks I made were just simple strokes and others were semicircular. I continued to cover the first layer like this, and the brush I'm using is a Cotman watercolour brush. I think it was a size 2, but any small brush will get the same results. I mixed up some light bluish grey paint and added this to the existing shapes, especially paying attention to putting some within some of the larger rounded shapes as I wanted them to look like big raindrops. You can see that the shapes are starting to look a bit more like droplets than they were before, but I am by no means finished yet. And here and there I added some more vertical thin grey paint to resemble window pane drips and just some random dots throughout. And I don't want to cover the whole of the surface, but I do want to have some randomness and different shapes and sizes to each of the particles, and this will help to create the 3-dimensional look. And now it's time to add the final highlight, and for this I added bright white, not mixing in any greys, as I wanted the brightest white I could get to stand out the most. And while this is somewhat random, the highlight generally occurs in the middle or the lower part of the droplet. The final part of the droplets is to add a bit more black to the areas that need it to just really make them stand out more. And this is the part that makes the painting look more like rain splatters rather than just marks on paper. And when I'm happy with the painting, I can start thinking about removing the masking tape and my painting is complete. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification button if you want to know when I upload my next videos. Thank you. and I'll see you in the next one.